Hello, Hornet Nation. Welcome to this special edition of the HIVE podcast. That we are going to skip all of the normal introductions and get right into the interview portion of today. I'm Joe Hutzler, the voice of the Hornets. Happy to be with you as always. And those of you that aren't watching can tell that I have a mask on. And those of you that are watching can tell that it's not easy to keep on. But I want to get to our guests. Of course, Athletic Director Jon Waters is here with us. Jon, how are we doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Of course. Before we get going too much further, let's go ahead and take these off. We are, those of you that are watching, you'll be able to see, have plenty of distance between us. So we are showcasing what is going to be the rules, the normal way that we do things coming up this fall. On the other side of that, when it comes to athletics, that will look very different because after yesterday's decision, the ODAC deciding to postpone fall and winter competitions for 2020 until 2021. Can we start with the background for that decision? Obviously, people should know that it wasn't just a random thing decided yesterday. How long of a process was it?
Sure. I think, the great thing with the ODAC is that we really have been in dialogue on these types of topics for a long time, going all the way back to last spring and really developing a rhythm for how the league was going to try to work through things, put us in a good spot to continue those conversations and work through the summer on a consistent basis. So really we've been active the last month, if you will, both in a weekly meeting dynamic as well as with additional conversations and everything else. So, I think one of the great things that the league has done is we have continued to integrate a lot of different streams of information and guidance into our process so that it's not, okay, well, this is one school's opinion or this opinion or whatever. We really have tried to embrace the science behind it and work through the different things that have come our way relative to the NCAA or Virginia Department of Health or the North Carolina Department of Health in the case of Guilford, and the CDC and a little bit everybody else. So,
obviously you mentioned you've been talking for the better part of a month. So the next question would be, what was the tipping point? What science did you hear about? What decisions came down from higher levels perhaps that led to this becoming the ultimate decision for the conference?
Sure. I think one of the key things, really school by school, and I'll certainly speak really for the Lynchburg dynamic, we have been embedded with the long-range planning team from the outset on this topic. So, in the state of Virginia, the State Council for Higher Education and the governor had each school develop a plan about how they're going to repopulate their campus, how they're going to work all those things together. And certainly the athletics plan has been a piece of that puzzle. And so, we have worked in conjunction and really following the lead of some of our campus experts that are healthcare professionals to develop a plan by which we felt like we could safely, put the student athletes in the best position possible based on science and based on really the prevalence of the virus in the general community, that we have. One of the I guess you asked me about tipping point, perhaps. I'll try to get there. I won't duck your question. But the NCAA has now issued 3 different versions of the resocialization of sport document. So it's like your best-selling novel that just keeps getting different and different and different. I'm not certain that we've gotten to the last chapter on any of that, so that continues to change. But last week we had a sense that they would really try to amplify and highlight the testing dynamic in a new and different way, which when they actually issued it, it did not disappoint. And so, I think more than anything, and I think I said it to somebody yesterday, it might have been one of the groups I spoke with, but athletic directors and leaders and coaches, for that matter, we're problem solvers. We love challenges and we love to figure out, okay, how can we do A, B, C, and D, and where will that get us, and how those different things fit together. Unfortunately, the testing dynamic is really beyond our control at this moment to be able to access it and the response times on testing and all of those other different things, I think really just kind of grew to the point where we said, you know what, we have a great opportunity if we start fresh in January with competition, because primarily the testing dynamic was related to competition. And with that opportunity in January, we really feel like that's our best chance to put all of our student athletes in a great spot to have a great year.
Well, those that are student athletes or not are still planning to come to campus because the school has decided that they'll be open, and whatever model they ultimately end up with, we're looking at a hybrid one at the moment. All of those factors lead to the question of, well, if I'm here, will I still be able to do things with my team?
Sure.
Will we still be able to have a sense of practice? What are the plans for the coaches? What are they able to do even though they're not able to play games?
Sure. Well, one of the great, I'll speak first just on the athletic piece and the NCAA dynamic. One of the great things that the NCAA has done for us is that they've switched the model for any given year from what we call a non-traditional and a traditional segment into a different setup which they use in other divisions that gives everybody 114 days during the academic year to be engaged in athletically related activities. And so that will really allow us to really map out and identify some meaningful segments for all of our teams in the fall that really get us to the starting line in January in a great spot, both physically and academically and mentally, and just the opportunity to really reconvene and work our way toward that starting line overall. So we're excited about that. I think from the standpoint of what our teams will do, what our student athletes will do, we're going to be very measured and thoughtful and staggered, if you will, about how we get our different programs in motion. We will probably limit the total number of student athletes that are active on any given day so that we can maximize the athletic training components, certainly making sure that all of our different daily protocols are in place and can be followed to the letter to put us all in a really, really good spot.
Two questions that are pre-2021.
Sure.
First being, is there a date or a roundabout date that is being talked about for putting out the schedule for 2021? Has that been discussed within the ODAC?
Yeah, we've begun to have those conversations, and the ODAC's actually pulled together a small task force, which I'm participating on, that will begin to craft a framework, if you will, for what that will look like after January. So I think tentatively, maybe mid-September, somewhere late September, will get us in a good spot where we at least have a good framework and we understand what the competitions are and all of those different things. I think the great thing for our student athletes and families has been that the ODAC really works well together on these types of things. The minute that we button all of these things up, I will be back in a mode that is crush them all. In fact, I think you and I even had a conversation about maybe getting a sledgehammer and making little models of each of the schools and just smashing them. So I will be the first one in line to do that with our conference competitors. I'm excited about the opportunity to get back at it. Overall. But I think by mid-September we'll have a good idea, probably what the specific game schedule will be. Our at least initial concept right now is to maintain the regular dynamic for the spring sports, because there's really no reason that they need to be disrupted. Work to tweak a few things with our winter championship seasons, and then make sure that we plug in all of our fall teams in a way that works really well for them.
Well, I think that's very important for people to know, just because there's the initial shock of yesterday that,
Sure.
Well, it's going to be canceled. No, it's postponed.
Right.
We will still have games, but I think once we have a schedule, people will feel certainly more confident about
Right.
that prospect of 2021.
Now, are you speaking for the students or for LHSN?
Well,
Because you want to have a schedule, you want to know when am I going to be on,
that is
so
true.
the entire Hutzler family can tune in.
Especially considering the amount of games per week that
Right,
will have
I
to be.
understand.
Yeah, so I'd like to know that as soon as
No, I
possible. But before we get to 2021, the winter season, you kind of touched on it there.
Mm-hmm.
Our basketball and our indoor track and our swimming folks here at Lynchburg, they obviously get started in that November range typically, and then they go through to the springtime. So will they still have a sense of normalcy related to really getting their season started in 2020, but not really but still not having any games till January?
Yeah, I think that's the expectation. I think all 4 of those programs in particular, actually 5 if you count men's and women's swimming separately, or men's and women's indoor track separately, that would be 6. But they will all have a regular practice dynamic in the fall semester. So, again, we're going to work everybody in motion. I think that the student athletes, once they come back and get comfortable on campus and really understanding what the campus protocols are and how those things fit together, I think that they'll find, some comfort level in a routine that has an athletic component. We're going to spend a lot of energy this fall trying to find some ways to really invest in our community in a new and dynamic way. Don't have a lot of details with that, but we're looking at a lot of things so that there'll be obviously physically distanced, safe opportunities that we can serve our community in an even greater way. And our programs all do a great job with that, but there's certainly a lot of needs going on, and we want to make sure that we're going to rise to the occasion on that.
Now, obviously, we're talking a lot about theoreticals and hopes and what we plan to have. What worst case scenario, things don't pan out at all, what are the rules related to eligibility for our fall and winter athletes? We know, thankfully, the spring athletes from last season got a chance to come back if they wanted to. Mm-hmm. Is the same kind of system put in place for the fall and winter sports?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one of the interesting conversations that continues to go on about decision-making processes and all these other different things. From a leadership standpoint, you can only make the decision that's in front of you at the moment. You can certainly keep all of the other ones in view and plan and have your backup plans and the third backup plan and all the rest of it, but you really can only make the decision that is staring you in the face at the moment as it relates to that. Again, one of the things I want to give the NCAA a lot of credit for is they have already lined up all of these relief waivers and different kinds of things that are legislative pieces that will serve our students really well. In the 2021 academic year, any students whose teams do not reach 50% of their games will not have burned a year of eligibility. So if you map it out and you're going to play a regular 25-game season, if for some reason things change, circumstances change, and that season gets shortened in some regard, then you will have not consumed that year of eligibility, and that's across all sports for 2021.
And to further look at that point, I believe the ODAC has said that when we start to play again, that there will be 70% of the schedule will be filled out with ODAC opponents, and then does that give the teams the option to still play non-conference opponents depending on if they're back or not?
Yeah, I know how excited you get with stats and numbers and like we're doing play-by-play.
I'm just making
what's
sure.
their on-goal percentage and save, all the rest of that. The commitment by the ODAC group is that we certainly recognize the value in staying in the state of Virginia, in them providing us a quality number of game opportunities, really, if you will, and North Carolina as well, our good friends at Guilford. So the commitment is that they will craft a schedule that provides 70% of the original maximum number of games, which varies by sport. Right. See, you're putting me through all kinds of twists and turns this morning.
Questions.
Yep, lots of questions. So again, I think that the great again, to this moment, as it relates to all things ODAC, the commitment is that the ODAC would craft a schedule that would be at least 70% of the original number, and that all schools will still have the autonomy to plug in non-conference games, which is very, very important for our programs in particular, that all have, high-level aspirations across the board.
Okay, well, I've grilled you enough.
That's a lot of math, a lot of questions right there, Joe.
I want to make sure we end by giving you, the complete floor here, and do your best as you normally do to inspire folks.
Lord have mercy.
Because you're really good at that.
We're in a lot of trouble.
But in all seriousness, I think it's important for people to understand that we're still committed to that championship level experience that we always talk about in the last 4 to 5 years at University of Lynchburg. So give us a little bit of a dive into why we're still committed to creating that, and maybe ways that we can still do it, and why people should believe in what we're talking about today, why they should be confident that they're going to come back. May not have any games, but we're going to get through to November on campus, and then we're going to come back in January better than ever.
Well, I should pull out like a full stack of, ream of paper and open it up and read all these different things, overall. But I still think for me it comes back to what is the University of Lynchburg's place in the world, if you will. I mean, I think that we are certainly not immune to challenges or problems or societal issues or injustice or any of those different things. And, we've done a lot already to make sure that we begin to address those, and we're excited about embracing the opportunity this fall with our student athletes to make sure that we reflect that Black Lives Matter, and that, we're really dialed into what's going on. So, that's one aspect of it, but the University of Lynchburg culturally is just in this unique vibe, if you will, that pulls together a lot of people from a lot of different places and gets everybody on the Lakeside Drive campus. And there's a melting pot and a blending that really is unique here that I don't see at a lot of other schools. There are a lot of other schools that are very cookie cutter. For us, I don't know that there's really anything more important that we do as coaches or leaders or higher ed, individuals, if you will, than to work through challenges with our students. So for us as leaders and for our programs to have an opportunity to go through these different experiences together, to have devastating moments, and I talked about it a little bit last night, but I mean, our two student athletes who have trained their entire lives to get to nationals, to be at the dinner the night before indoor nationals last March when the NCAA canceled the whole thing. To be able to process through and work through those different types of experiences, those are the kind of things that make a difference in life. So I think our student athletes, they're here with us on campus, or if they've got to make other commitments during the fall and, maybe take classes online or however that shakes out, staying engaged with us, believing in how we work through these different things, making life choices if they're here that put us in a mode where championships can happen in the spring, as opposed to, there are probably student athletes, and hopefully they're not ours, that are at home, out at the club, no mask on, hanging out with 800 people, and taking a lot of chances that we know may impact them and may impact us as a community. So, I mean, I really feel like this is just an amazing time to be alive. Certainly every day is like being at the circus and you don't know what the next act is going to be that comes out. But I think it's an amazing opportunity, really, and I don't think that there are as many schools in the country that are in a great spot to navigate through this with their students as we are. The leadership of this institution has put in the time and effort to really dissect this from every different angle known to man. We haven't cut corners. We haven't missed a meeting. We have looked at it from top to bottom and all the rest of it. Now we're at a point where, because we believe in our students overall, I mean, we're headed back in the direction of, okay, let's get back together. We know what the game plan needs to be. We'll continue to communicate it as we go, so that by the time everybody gets here fully, that everybody understands, okay, every day you're going to take your temperature and you're going to check your symptoms and, you know, avoid those negative interactions. And then we work our way forward. And I really believe that special things are ahead for the university. I'm excited to be a part of them, and I'm excited to help our student athletes and staff really get to that starting line in January, and keep this thing in a good motion. So.
Well, as am I. I'm excited as well. It's going to look different and feel a little bit different, but you know, we're going to make those right choices and not take those chances. And I think we're ready to go come January for sure. So,
awesome.
Thanks for all of this information and your time. Can't shake hands, but we can do like an Air 5 or something.
Air 5, we'll take it. All right, thanks, Joe.